He slapped me on my birthday, in public, and told me to move. That's when I knew I didn't have a son anymore. I didn't expect to cry on my 75th birthday. But I did. Not in the way you might think, no loud sobs, no trembling. Just something heavy sitting in my chest, like tears that didn't know how to come out. I kept quiet, like I always did. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. I had picked a small Italian bistro for lunch. Nothing fancy. Just me, my son David, and his fiancée, Miranda. I'd made the reservation myself. David never remembers things like that. He never remembers my birthday unless I remind him a few times. And I had reminded him. Twice. I wore a blue dress. It used to be his favorite on me. Years ago, he said it made my eyes look bright. I curled my hair, even though my fingers hurt from arthritis. My back ached just from bending over the bathroom sink. But I wanted to look nice. I wanted to feel like I mattered, like I still had a place in his life. I got to the restaurant early. I always do. The table was ready. I ordered a bottle of red wine, the Merlot David likes. I thought maybe it would mean something, that I remembered. He used to say I was thoughtful. They were 22 minutes late. I watched through the glass as they strolled up slowly, not a single sign of apology on their faces. David was laughing. Miranda had her phone in one hand, the other clutching his arm like this was all about her. They didn't even pause to check the time. He walked in and said, "Happy birthday, Mom," in that casual way people say things when they're just checking a box. He leaned toward my cheek but didn't kiss it. It was so quick and shallow, I don't know if he touched me at all. I felt cold immediately. Empty. Miranda didn't even wish me a happy birthday. She smiled like she was doing me a favor by showing up. Then she whispered something to David and they both laughed. I don't know what she said. But it hurt that it was a joke I was clearly not part of. I tried to keep the moment light. I ordered the Merlot you like, I said. David didn't say thank you. He didn't even acknowledge it. He just pulled out the chair across from me. Miranda stood, hesitating. Then she frowned slightly and said, "Isn't that the better seat? The lighting's nicer." David looked directly at me. "Can you move?" I was confused. I was already sitting here. His face tightened. "Just get up. Don't make this a thing." That sentence hit like a punch. Like my presence, my comfort, was an inconvenience. I hesitated, hoping he would realize how wrong that sounded. That maybe he'd say, "I'm sorry, Mom, never mind." But no. He said it again, louder. "Get up." Then, as I moved slowly, reaching for my purse, he slapped my shoulder. It wasn't hard. But it was fast. Cold. Like I was a fly he needed out of the way. My chest burned. My stomach flipped. My ears buzzed. And everyone in the restaurant saw it. No one said a word. Not even Miranda. "Why do you always make everything harder than it has to be?" he muttered as he sat in my seat. He didn't say sorry. Didn't even glance at me. Miranda slid into the other seat with a smirk, adjusting her blouse like nothing had happened. I sat by the wall. The corner was tight. I had to shift my knees to fit. No one cared. They began talking like I wasn't even there. David looked at the menu, pointed things out to Miranda. "Try the calamari," he said. "This place does it well." Not a word to me. Not even a glance. I may as well have been a waitress. Miranda said, "This place is cute," and David said, "Yeah, she likes her little spots." She. Not Mom. Just she. Like I was a regular stranger. I looked down at my hands, resting on the edge of the table. My knuckles are swollen from years of scrubbing dishes, carrying laundry, and holding crying babies. Those hands kept him fed, clean, warm. Now, I was just a placeholder. They talked about their wedding plans. The flowers. The food. David joked, she doesn't want a gray old man in the pictures. I didn't laugh. I don't think I even blinked. Miranda laughed. Loudly. Then Miranda said, we could really use help with the photographer. It's, like, $4,000. David turned to me. You haven't said anything about helping with the wedding. I said, you haven't asked. He rolled his eyes. Come on, Mom. You've got the house. You live alone. You don't need all that space. You can sell and downsize. That would free up money for us. There it was. Not even pretending to ask. Just assuming. Us. Like I was a bank. Not a person. He kept going. You're just sitting on all that equity. Might as well put it to use. It's not like you're hosting family anymore. That cut deep. Deeper than he'll ever understand. Not once did he ask if I was okay living alone. Not once did he offer to help me. He only cared about what I could give. When the waiter came, David ordered for Miranda. We'll get the ravioli and the salad. She likes the dressing on the side, he said. He didn't ask what I wanted. The waiter turned to me. And for you? I wasn't hungry anymore. Just the soup, I whispered. The food arrived. David made jokes. Miranda showed him videos on her phone. They laughed. I sat in silence, picking at my soup. Then came more comments. She always overorders, David said, gesturing toward me. Miranda added, she never finishes her food. They laughed again. I hadn't even touched my spoon. They spoke about their honeymoon next. A cruise. Somewhere warm. David said, it's been a rough year. We deserve something nice. I wanted to ask what he meant. What was rough? I paid his rent last March. Sent him grocery money in July. He didn't say thank you then either. When the check came, I reached for my wallet. David waved his hand. No, no. You invited us. You're paying. Of course. I paid without complaint. I signed the receipt. My hand was trembling. Miranda stood up and hugged me. Barely. Her arms didn't even wrap around me. David was already on his phone. He said, thanks, Mom. No eye contact. No warmth. They left first. I watched them go. I stayed. I looked at the half-full glass of wine. The crumpled napkin. The seat I had been pushed out of. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked into the kitchen. Still wearing that dress. The one I chose because he used to like it. I opened the drawer with the documents. Birth certificate. House deed. My will. I sat at the table. I crossed out his name. Then I called the real estate agent. Calmly. Directly. Not out of hate. Not out of revenge. Out of truth. He showed me who he was. And I finally believed him. That birthday was a gift. Not the kind wrapped in paper. But the kind that opens your eyes. I may have walked into that restaurant as a mother. But I walked out as a woman who was done being disrespected. That was the last birthday I ever spent hoping he'd see me. And the first night I took my life back. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not right away. When I got home that night, I sat in the dark. The house felt too big. The walls echoed every sound I made, like the place was asking where the laughter had gone. It didn't hit me all at once. The pain came in small waves. First, it was the sound of my shoes on the tile floor. Then, it was the clink of the teaspoon as I stirred sugar into a cup of tea I never drank. By the time I reached for my cardigan, the one I wore every time David visited, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The silence in the house was loud. I tried to sleep, but the slap kept replaying in my mind. Not because of the sting. but because of what it meant. That he didn't even hesitate. That it was easy for him. I stared at the ceiling most of the night. Somewhere near dawn, I heard the garbage truck pass by. That was when the memories started to crawl out. Not just of that lunch, but of all the years that led to it. David used to need me. Once, when he was little, he cried every time I left the room. He used to hold my hand and say, "Don't go far, Mommy." And I never did. I gave up college classes to stay home. I gave up jobs, friends, time. But slowly, that softness disappeared. It didn't happen in one day. It happened in 1,000 small moments. When he was 13 and rolled his eyes at me in front of his friends. When he stopped saying thank you. When he called only when he needed something. And each time, I told myself it was a phase. That it would pass. That it was normal. But it wasn't. He changed. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe I just didn't want to see who he really was becoming. I remember when he borrowed money for college. I co-signed the loans. He said, "You'll always be my hero." But when he dropped out the second time, he didn't tell me. I found out from a bank notice. I paid it. Quietly. I always paid. When he got his first apartment, I bought his furniture. When he crashed his car, I covered the insurance. He said, "I'll pay you back." He never did. When his job fell through, I sent groceries, rent, utilities. He thanked me once, by text. 3 words. "Appreciate it, Mom." But he never called just to talk. Not anymore. If I didn't reach out, we didn't speak. And somehow, I told myself that was love. The morning after my birthday, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were tired. Her mouth drawn tight. Her shoulders slumped. I whispered, "What are you still trying for?" It was like something cracked open. I walked through the house, touching the frames on the walls. David's school photos. His graduation picture. A photo of him and me at the beach when he was 9. He had his arms around my neck in that one. I took it down. Not out of anger. Just out of truth. I didn't throw it away. I put it in a drawer. Later that day, I made a list. Not of groceries. Not of chores. But of everything I had done for him in the past 10 years. It filled 2 pages. 2 pages of bills paid, favors done, errands run, things sacrificed. At the bottom, I wrote, "He slapped me on my birthday." That was when I realized the truth. I had taught him how to treat me. Every time I stayed quiet. Every time I forgave without being asked. Every time I paid and didn't ask for anything in return. I built the version of him that thought this was okay. And now I was done. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was quiet. A quiet kind of done. The kind that doesn't go back. I spent the next few days preparing. I didn't answer David's calls. Yes, he called. Once. The day after. He left a voicemail, "Hey, sorry about the other day. Miranda said you seemed upset. Let me know if you still want to talk." That was it. No apology. No mention of the slap. No acknowledgement of the hurt. He wanted me to be the same. To answer like always. To make it easy again. I didn't. I boxed up more pictures. I cleaned out my desk. I found the deed to the house. I contacted the agent. I started planning the sale. People say it's never too late to start over. They don't usually mean at 75. But they should. Because I did. And I didn't need anyone's permission. I started sleeping better. Not because the hurt was gone. But because I wasn't pretending anymore. And that kind of honesty is a quiet kind of peace. There were still moments. Little ones. When I almost called him. When I thought, maybe I misunderstood. But then I'd remember the way he looked at me. Like I was a burden. Like I was in the way. And that memory would bring the silence back. A healing kind of silence. I wasn't angry anymore. But I was awake. I had spent years giving everything to someone who only saw me when he needed something. I had been the helper, the fixer, the wallet, the fallback. But I was never just his mother. I was a person. And I was done being invisible. I started sorting through the closets. Not just David's things. Mine, too. Clothes I hadn't worn in years. Boxes full of things I kept just in case. I filled 10 bags. Donated most. Threw out what was broken. There was a feeling that came with that. Like I was making space. Not just in my house, but in my life. One afternoon, I opened the hallway closet and saw the coat David gave me years ago. It still had the tag on it. Not because I didn't like it. But because it was 2 sizes too small. He never asked my size. Just bought what looked nice. Miranda probably picked it out. Still, I had kept it. Like a reminder. I finally gave it away. I started walking every morning. Just up the street, and back. Breathing in the air. Feeling my legs carry me somewhere. I began cooking for one. Real meals. Setting the table. Lighting a candle. Just for me. I wasn't sad. I was learning. One night, I took out old journals. I hadn't read them in years. I saw how many entries were about David. His moods. His struggles. His needs. Pages and pages. But there were barely any about me. It hit me then, I had lived my life orbiting his. But now, I was stepping out of that orbit. Not because I stopped loving him. But because I started loving myself. The hardest part? It wasn't crossing his name out of my will. It was accepting that he might never care that I did. But I cared. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. That was the day I decided I wasn't living for what he needed anymore. I was living for me. And I haven't looked back since. I didn't cry. Not even as I looked at the empty space where David's framed photographs used to hang. There was no sadness left. Just a quiet, steady feeling. Like something in me had settled. That morning, I canceled the auto payment to David's phone bill. I had been covering it for years. At first it was supposed to be temporary, back when he lost his job. Then it became silent and expected. Never discussed. Never acknowledged. I opened my online banking, and in 3 clicks, I ended it. Then the car insurance. I had forgotten I was still paying the monthly fee. His car. His name. But my card. Click. Gone. A strange thing happened after that. I didn't feel guilty. For so long, guilt had been my shadow. Every time I said no, or even thought about saying no, I felt it pulling at me. Whispering, "You owe him." But I didn't. Not anymore. Later that day, I turned off the lights in the guest room, David's old room. I had washed the bedding, vacuumed the floor, even dusted the bookshelves. But I left it bare. Empty. Like a quiet answer. I walked through the kitchen. My hand hovered over the drawer where I kept birthday cards he sent. There weren't many. Most were quick messages. Sometimes just his name. I closed the drawer. It was enough. That night, I lit a single candle and made soup. For me. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder if he was going to call. Because I knew he wasn't. And for the first time, I didn't care. A few days later, I got a message from Miranda. "Hey, just checking in. David says you've been distant. Everything okay?" Distant. I stared at that word. Like she hadn't sat next to him while he humiliated me. Like she hadn't laughed along. I didn't reply. An hour later, David called. I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, look. I don't know what's going on, but this is getting weird. If you're upset, say something. Don't just go silent. Say something? I had been saying something for decades. Not in words. In actions. In every bill I paid, every favor I did, every time I swallowed my feelings to keep peace. But none of that had ever counted. Now the silence spoke for me. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to explain. I was done. The house went on the market that Friday. I didn't tell David. I didn't tell anyone. The real estate agent was kind. She walked through the rooms with me and asked if I had any emotional ties. I said, not anymore. She smiled, and I saw in her eyes that she understood. That weekend, I donated more of David's old belongings. Boxes of trophies he hadn't asked about in years. A stack of worn-out comic books. Old coats, some with tags still attached. I had saved all of it. Waiting. Hoping. He never came to claim any of it. I stood in the garage after everything was gone. The shelves were bare. The silence was clean. I thought about every time he said, I'll stop by, and didn't. Every time he said, we'll do something soon, and never followed through. Every time he said, you worry too much, like my care was a burden. It wasn't anger anymore. It was recognition. He had shown me, again and again, how little space I occupied in his life unless I was useful. So now, I was becoming useless. On purpose. Then something happened. Something small, but it shook me. I found an old envelope tucked behind the pantry, a letter from my father. Dated 1968. I had forgotten it existed. But as soon as I opened it, the words came back. You made your choice. Don't come crawling back. It was the day he kicked me out for choosing to keep David. I was only 19. Alone. No one stood up for me. And now, 55 years later, those words echoed again. From David. You're being unfair. You're distant. Say something. Just like my father. Just like that day. But now I saw it clearly. History doesn't just repeat. It waits for you to forget. And I had. Until now. I folded the letter, set it down, and whispered, I didn't crawl back then. And I won't now. That was the twist I hadn't seen coming, the pattern. The same punishment for being too strong. For choosing myself. But this time I was ready. That week, I unsubscribed from every birthday reminder for him. I took his name off my emergency contact list. I removed him from the insurance policy. I kept moving. Not because I hated him. But because I had finally remembered what it was like to protect myself. One morning, while sipping tea near the window, I saw a small bird land on the fence. It had a bent wing, trembling, but it stayed upright. It made me think of myself. Injured, but still here. Still standing. And then, out of nowhere, I smiled. The first genuine smile in months. David texted again. This time, Mom, if you're selling the house, we should talk. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Just concern about what was leaving. What he might lose. I didn't reply. 2 days later, I hope you know what you're doing. Another, you're being really unfair. Unfair. All the years I gave. All the holidays I hosted. All the emergencies I solved. All the times I said yes when I wanted to say no. And now I was unfair? I put down the phone. Turned it off. Let the battery die. The silence that followed was a relief. I walked outside. I looked at the trees. Bare branches stretching toward the sky. Even without their leaves, they stood tall. And so would I. The next morning, I took out a notepad and began writing a list of small goals. Nothing dramatic, just things I'd always put off. Fixing the fence. Joining the book club I never had time for. Visiting the lake on a weekday. I even called my neighbor Evelyn and asked if she still wanted help with her garden this spring. Her voice lit up when I asked. And I realized I had time now. I had space. I had myself. Not because I lost something, but because I finally let go of what was never mine to begin with, their approval. And in that letting go, I found my life again. Quiet. Honest. Mine. It didn't take long for the silence to break. Not the quiet peace I had built inside my house, that stayed. It was the outside noise that came flooding in. It started with a knock at the door. I didn't answer. Then came the messages. First from David. Then Miranda. Then my niece. Then a cousin I hadn't heard from in years. You need to talk to him. This isn't like you. He's just stressed. Don't throw everything away over one bad moment. One bad moment. That phrase made my chest tighten. They made it sound like he dropped a glass or said something rude. Like he didn't slap me. In public. On my birthday. Like he didn't humiliate me, then walk away like I was nothing. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I read every word in silence. Let each message sit in my stomach like a stone. Then came the real twist, the part that stung deeper than I expected. We all think you're overreacting. That was from Miranda. Overreacting. I played that word in my head on a loop. Over and over. As if pain had a measurement. As if my years of quiet giving, my decades of yes, my thousands of swallowed emotions, could be brushed aside with a word. I thought about every holiday meal I hosted when they never offered to bring a thing. I thought about the time I watched their children for an entire summer, and they gave me a scented candle in return. I thought about the time David forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. And I still baked his favorite pie when he visited. But now? I was overreacting. That word hardened something in me. They didn't understand what they were really asking. They wanted me to come back. Not because they missed me, but because they missed the role I played. The cushion. The quiet one. The helper. The forgiver. But she was gone. Then the anger started. David called again. He left a message that wasn't calm this time. His voice was hard. Are you serious right now? You're going to let a single moment ruin everything? After everything I've done? You're acting crazy. Crazy. That's the word people use when they want you to stop making them uncomfortable. Then Miranda sent a voice note. Sharper, colder. I don't know what kind of story you're telling yourself, but David was under pressure. We had guests. You made a scene. And now you're punishing us? Punishing? For finally stepping back? For refusing to be their floor mat? Even David's friends chimed in. Your mom's lost it, one wrote in a group chat David accidentally included me in. I told him she always seemed a little off, said another. I saw their names. People I'd cooked for. People who ate at my table. They were circling, trying to spin the story. Paint me as irrational. Difficult. Fragile. They couldn't accept I'd simply stopped. Miranda escalated it. She called and left a message that started composed and ended in shouting. You're making this worse for everyone. David hasn't slept in days. You've turned the family against itself. You're breaking us. Are you happy now? Happy? I was exhausted. The next day, my niece texted me. If you don't come to the family brunch this weekend, we'll know where you stand. Where I stand? I typed and deleted a dozen replies before writing just one line. I've stood alone before. I'm not afraid to do it again. I began to notice things. Subtle shifts. My sister didn't invite me to her daughter's graduation dinner. My cousin stopped replying to my messages. Even Evelyn, my neighbor, seemed hesitant when she waved. The silence was growing outside my house now, too. But this one didn't bring peace. It brought something else, clarity. I saw how fragile the family balance had been. How much of it had been held up by my effort alone. I started rereading the texts from David. Not just the recent ones, all of them. Every time he needed something. Every time he asked for help without asking how I was. Every time he said, just this once, and never paid me back. There was a pattern. A cycle. He never really said thank you. Not in a way that counted. And when I finally stopped, he panicked. Not because he loved me. But because I disrupted the system. A week after the messages started, David showed up. Unannounced. He stood on my porch, hands in his pockets, face drawn, eyes flashing with something sharp. "You're being really unfair," he said. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "You made your choice," I said. He shifted. Looked uncomfortable. I was upset. "You embarrassed Miranda. You know how she gets." I stared at him. I could feel my heart slowing down. Not racing. Not afraid. Just tired. "You hit me, David." He didn't look at me. Just shrugged. "It wasn't that hard. You were yelling. People were staring." My fingers clenched. Not in rage, but in disbelief. "I wasn't yelling," I said quietly. "I was sitting. You told me to get off Miranda's seat." He shook his head. "You always make things worse." There it was. The root of it all. Not only was I invisible, when I finally took up space, I was an inconvenience. I closed the door. He stood there for a minute. Knocked once more. Then shouted through the door, "You're throwing away your family over what? Pride? You'll regret this." But I didn't watch him go. That night, the messages grew louder. "You can't just shut everyone out. Family is all you have. You're too old to be alone." That one came from my sister. Too old. As if aging meant surrender. As if 75 meant I was supposed to accept mistreatment just to have someone at the table. I replied to one message. Only one. Being alone is better than being unseen. And I meant it. Days turned into weeks. The house didn't feel lonely. It felt full of breath. My own. No footsteps pacing in worry. No expectations weighing on my shoulders. Just peace. And still, they tried. A Facebook post. Family should forgive. A group message. Let's talk things through. An invitation. Come to Easter. Let's move on. Move on. Not apologize. Not reflect. Just pretend. Again. I didn't go. I walked by the lake that Sunday. Watched ducks glide across the water. Bought myself a small pastry from the corner bakery. Smiled at a little girl who waved at me. And for a moment, I felt more seen by a child I didn't know than I ever had by my own son. That realization didn't crush me. It set me free. They wanted the old version of me back. The quiet fixer. The one who absorbed every hurt and called it love. But I had stepped out of that role. And I wasn't going back. But the most unexpected thing happened a week later. It was a letter. Not a message. Not a call. A real letter, folded, handwritten, stamped. The envelope was thin, pale blue. No return address. Just my name, carefully spelled out. For a moment, I thought it might be from David. Some grand apology, maybe. But the handwriting wasn't his. I opened it slowly, expecting bitterness. Instead, I found something else. Dear Mrs. Holbrook. You don't remember me. But 30 years ago, you were my elementary school librarian. I was the shy girl with a speech stutter who always sat alone. One day, you read me a story and told me I had a strong voice. I never forgot that. Last month, I saw your name on the community newsletter. I just wanted to say, thank you. You changed how I saw myself. You gave me courage, even if you didn't know it. I read it 3 times. My hands trembled. It wasn't from family. It wasn't loud. But it was real. And it saw me. That single moment, after weeks of being called dramatic, difficult, delusional, made something inside me soften. I had not disappeared. I had just been ignored by the wrong people. And the right ones had finally begun to see me. The next morning, the pressure shifted. A cousin messaged me saying she hoped I was okay. Another aunt sent a bouquet of flowers with a card, just thinking of you. But I didn't open the door to the past again. I thanked them. I smiled. But I stayed where I was. David, however, did not stop. A week after the letter, he sent me a long message. I can't believe you'd throw your own son away. I made one mistake. One. And you're ruining everything over it. You're acting like a stranger. You're being selfish. That word again. Selfish. I used to fear it. I used to tiptoe around it like it meant failure. Now I wore it like a medal. Because maybe selfish just meant finally choosing myself. I didn't reply. 2 days later, he came again. This time, he brought Miranda. She stood behind him on my porch, arms folded. Her face stiff, but her eyes were scanning, judging. He did all the talking. Mom, we've come to take you back home. This is ridiculous. You're selling the house, cutting everyone off. Enough already. You made your point. My point? It wasn't a point. It was a life I was reclaiming. I opened the door just wide enough to speak. You're not welcome here. Not until you see what you did. Not until you feel it. David's mouth fell open. Miranda scoffed. This is just sad, she said. You'd rather rot here alone than be with your family. No, I said. I'd rather be alone than live where I'm not respected. Then I closed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess it. I didn't look through the curtains to see how long they stood there. I went to the kitchen, made myself tea, and sat in the sunroom, letting the silence stretch around me like a warm coat. Later that night, another message came. Just 3 words. You'll regret this. I didn't answer. I didn't save it. I just turned off the phone. Instead, I went to my bookshelf, found an old journal I hadn't touched in years, and wrote one line. This is the year I came home to myself. Not to a place. Not to a family. To myself. The peace that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't joyful in a flashy way. It was steady. Honest. I planted herbs on the windowsill. I joined a walking group. I called a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. And I started laughing again. Not the polite, surface kind. The real kind that rises from the belly. I stopped waiting for birthdays to be remembered. I stopped expecting calls. I stopped trying to earn what should have been given freely. Because now I understood, love that must be begged for is not love. It's survival dressed up as devotion. And I was done surviving. The final message from David came a month later. It was quiet. No rage. Just this. If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. But I didn't want to find him. Not because I hated him. But because I had found something better. Me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. So if you've ever felt invisible, disposable, or like your worth depends on how much you give, this is for you. You don't have to keep shrinking to be loved. You don't have to earn kindness. And if you walk away from people who won't see you, know this. You are not alone. I won't be afraid to tell the truth anymore. Even if it hurts,